Hey everybody, it's Andrew Brown, and welcome to Final Submissions for the AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp. This is the form you need to fill out, and you have to follow some additional instructions in order for me to run the validator against your account. This is so if you're attempting either Gold or Red Squad. If you are not attempting Gold or Red Squad, do not fill this form out. If you are not done Week X, do not fill this form out. If you fill this form out and I don't see submissions in the student portal, I'm going to just skip your submission here because it means that you're not listening. Yeah, that is what I'm expecting. There are a few people that get exceptions because they have issues with their infrastructure that I can't even solve. And so I gave them permission to submit. If you know who you are, then you are okay to submit here. But make sure you do submit for Week X and you put that in your considerations that I said that you could do it. And I'll remember who it is. So don't just write it in there, okay, if you're trying to get into Gold Squad and you're not 100% done. So this form has to be filled out. Before you fill in this form, we'll fill it in together, but we need to collect parameters here, and we need to generate out a CloudFormation template. You need to do this because it's just going to be too labor intensive if I have to generate out a CloudFormation template for permissions for everybody. But there's a repo here called Cloud Project Bootcamp Validation Tool, and what I want you to do is go ahead and launch that in a new workspace. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that, and we'll go and start filling out this form. So I'm just filling it out as an example to you. So we'll go here. The reason I'm asking for your Discord name, whatever your Discord name is because I'm going to cross-reference activity in the Discord. So if you were doing things in the Discord, and let's say you're exceptionally a good helper to other boot campers, that might get you bumped to Red Squad. So, put your Discord name in there because it could be an advantage to you. I'm going to select Red Squad because I want to get to Red Squad here. And these are the input parameters we need for me to run the validator, but also you need some of these to generate out the CloudFormation template file for permissions. So coming back over here, this is now loaded. And so the first thing you need to do is make a new file here called .env. We're going to copy the contents of this over here, copy it all here, and we'll paste it in. And we'll say allow. If you want to run the validator, you'd have to fill in these two values here, but for the time being, I'm taking them out. I do have them set in my environment here. So like if I go over to AWS, I can do AWS SDS get caller identity. And I think mine's set up. And only if I spell it right. But again, you don't necessarily need this for the submission. It's really not... it's not spelling right here. There we go. So yeah, this is hooked up to an account here. But if you want to run the validation steps to actually see what the results would come out, you can do that. But I'm not showing that in this video here. I've done it in previous videos. All I'm doing here is showing you how to generate out the first step, the permission, so that I have access to your account. So the first value that we care about is the target AWS account. This is your AWS account ID. So I'm going to go over to my account here and grab out the account ID from the top here. And we're going to go ahead and paste that in here. These are the same for me because I'm running in the same account. This one is always going to be this. You do not touch this one. It should always be this value. This one is going to be your account. So, this should be different from this one, right? So make sure you do that. I'm going to copy this value, go back to the submissions form, paste it in here. Primary region. This is where your application is running. So mine is CA Central, right? Wherever your Fargate cluster is, where your main resources are, put that one there. Some of your resources have to run in specific regions. So like, CloudFront is a global region, and so lots of the times they default to US East 1, but choose the main region that your cluster is running in. Your domain name. So here, this is your custom domain name, and we want it to be whatever it's supposed to be. So for mine, it is crudder.com. It's whatever your Apex or naked domain name is. If for whatever reason you are using a subdomain, because some people might be doing that, they might have something like this, and then it would be like API.whatever. But for the most part, it should be the naked or Apex domain. If you have a more complex domain setup, you know who you are and that you need to provide that correctly to me. But for the most part, it should look something like that. Your GitHub full name repo, so that will be your GitHub username followed by the repo name. And I just want it like this format. I don't want the full URL. I want it in this format. The reason why is that we're pasting them in here, right? So notice that we have to fill out the AWS user region here, the naked domain here, the GitHub full name repo here. Next is cluster name. So your cluster name should be the one based on the CloudFormation stack. So if I go over to ECS, we'll go over here for a moment. Some people might have the old CRUDR cluster. So just make sure you're selecting the correct one. It's not going to be named, it shouldn't be called just CRUDR. It should be something like CRUDR cluster Fargate cluster. If you followed my instructions exactly, we'll have the exact same names. If you changed it slightly or there's a spelling mistake, make sure that it's correct. And so I'm pasting that one in there. The backend family, this is the task definition family, also the name of the service, because we kept them all the same. If we go over to task definitions, it's this right here, right? So if I go into here, it might even tell me the family name somewhere. It's just this. I think it's just that name. It's just this name here. So we're looking for backend Flask, not the front end React one. So we'll go here and notice that I replace it here. So I even have it as the same suggestion down below. Then you have your Cognito user pool name. So what we'll do is make our way over to Cognito. And we are going to go, and this is the name right there. So mine's CRUDR user pool. If you followed my instructions exactly the same way, you'll have the same value as well. We'll go over here. It's okay if it's different, just make sure it's filled in. So there's there. We now need the API Gateway API ID. So we'll go over to API Gateway, and we'll go over here, and we're going to go into, give it a moment to load. We're going to click into our APIs here, and it's this ID right here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that in. Right, it should look like that. The raw assets bucket name, this is the bucket to which things are being uploaded to, not where they're being served, because you have assets bucket, but this is the name where it holds the raw assets. So if we go back over to S3, okay, we'll go over to our buckets, and I know mine's called that, so I go here. Remember, these bucket names are unique, so there's no way you'd have the exact same name as me. You'd have to name it slightly different. So mine is, what did I say mine was? CRUDR uploaded avatars, right? So I go into here. These are the raw ones that I uploaded, and so that's the name that I want to have for mine. Yours will not be the same as mine. So make sure you choose whichever name it's supposed to be here. Right, update it here, update it here. So that's all the values that we need to run this thing. Then we have considerations. So I'm not submitting this yet because I've yet to add permission. So now that all these values are filled in, the only other thing is the external ID. And your user UUID. So for the external ID, I want it to match your user UUID. Now I just put this value in here randomly, but if you go over to the student portal, I've added this right here. This is your UUID, and you need to copy this value, and you need to paste it in here, okay? And you also need to paste it in here. Super, super important that, well, actually, I don't think it matters if you paste it in here, but you'll see here in a moment why this matters, because that is going to be the value that is going to be used by when you launch the CloudFormation template. So just understand we need to have that user UID. It's going to make sure that your permissions is protected and I'm the only one that is accessing it, okay? So now that that stuff is filled in, these things are triggered by rake files, rake commands here. So in here we have permit, pull, and validate. So what you're doing is you're running the permit part, you're running this part for me, and when you submit, I'm gonna do the pull, and then I'm gonna do the validate. So what I'm going to do here is now go ahead and go into the Ruby one here, and I want to go ahead and run the permit. So I'm going to write bundle exec rake permit. You are doing this. This is what you need to do. And we'll hit enter. And it says gathering the permissions. And what it's going to do is generate output. It was Bootcamp 2023. Notice that it has your username. And then we get this cross-account role. So this is the role that I want you to download. I'm noticing that it's not defaulting this value here. So just to make your life easier, I'm going to make a slight adjustment here. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Where is it? Delete permanently, delete. Because I want your life to be super easy. So I'm going to make one quick change to this template. So I'm just trying to think where that template is. It is in here. And I'm just going to make one change here. I'm going to say default, and I'm going to bring in the source value because it's always going to be the same. And that way you don't have to fill this part in. Okay, and I'll just do this here like this. And yeah, string, so that should be fine. So what I'll do is go back and hit up, and we'll go back into this output directory. Okay, so now it's going to default that value. So this is the template you need to download. So download this template. Okay, so I'm downloading that to my computer. I'm going to make my way over to my AWS account, which is here, and we're going to go over to CloudFormation. Okay. And I'm going to create a stack with new resources, and we're going to say upload a template file. I'm going to go here. I'm going to choose that new template. I think it downloaded to here. I'm not sure where it is. Give me a second to find out. I'm looking for that file. And I'm just cleaning my desktop a little bit up so I can easily show you where it is. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is choose a file. And so that is that cross-account file there. We'll say open. Okay. And what we'll do is go ahead and hit next. So we'll hit next. And we want to put a stack name in here. So I'm going to call this Cloud Project Bootcamp Validation Tool, AWS 2023. The name of this doesn't matter. It's just so that you can remember what it is. If you mess with the name here, this does not matter. We have an external ID and the source account ID, so it should be this. It has to be exactly this value because you're giving access to my account. The external ID is going to be the UUID. So you copy the UUID in there, you paste it in because I need it in order to run the validations. We'll hit next. And what we'll do is go down the bottom here and we'll hit next. And the last thing I want you to do is checkbox this here. You have to checkbox this. If you don't checkbox this, it won't work. I'm going to click submit in the bottom right corner. I just realized that I've been covering the screen here, but you get the idea. And we'll hit submit, and that's going to create permissions. So we'll give it a moment to create. I'll just pause here because sometimes this takes a little bit of time. So I'll be back here in a moment, okay? All right, so after a short little while, this is now deployed. If you're curious of what's in the contents of this file, you can go over here and take a look. So it might be worth reviewing as to why we were filling these out. So if you go down below here in this file, there's a few substitutions that are happening. So the first thing is if we go through this here, you'll notice that you have an account ID here. So this will get replaced with yours. Over here, we have the cluster name, the backend service. You can see that some of these values are being used. The big thing is this string equal, so it's locking down all these permissions to the primary region where it needs to. This way, like if for whatever reason, if somebody was to, compromise the cross-account role, it's going to be very limited to where it's happening. Not that we're going to have any issues, but that's the case here. And so you can just see down below here that we're now saying only these buckets. So it's based on that Apex domain where it's adding the WW, the assets, or it's just that asset one, and then that one extra bucket there. So yeah, for the most part, most of the things over here are being used at this stage. And so that's why we need to fill them all out. We go back over to the form, which we need to finish. There's one last section. Anything I should take into consideration from a technical perspective when grading. This is not a place to tell me sad stories why you're behind. This is for technical things. So like if you're going for Red Squad, you might have done something differently that could break the validation tool, but is technically correct because you are going above and beyond and extending the functionality of the application. And so this is just to kind of help me know about those things so that when I see the validator fail in certain areas, I can then understand why it might have failed. So for example, let's say you decided to, instead of using DynamoDB, you used MongoDB. And so DynamoDB would clearly fail, but I want to give you a credit and maybe even Red Squad for implementing MongoDB instead of DynamoDB. So things like that that we want to take in consideration, or maybe you built the front end out of using Next.js as opposed to the basic React app, and maybe you deployed the front end somewhere else, like on a Lambda, as opposed to CloudFront. So there are those kind of considerations that I want you to place in there because I want to make sure that I grade you fairly. So make sure that we're focused on technical stuff here, okay? If you have articles that you've submitted, then just tell me about that, because there are 2 boxes in the student portal that you can fill in. So if we go over back to the student portal and we go over to and ignore this tab, this was an old implementation, we never finished that, but if we go to student portal here, there should be 2 fields somewhere here. Where the heck are our links? We definitely have fields for it. We have fields for it. So maybe what I'll do is I'll add them to the form. Give me 2 seconds, okay? All right, so I've adjusted that form, and so now it's going to you can just put URLs in here. So if you publish a couple articles or a single article or a few of them, you put them in there. You're supposed to make an article for Red Squad. If you don't have an article, that doesn't necessarily mean you won't make it into Red Squad, but I'm just trying to give other ways for you to get into Red Squad, and so your article could be the way that you land your way in there. It could be the work that you've done. It could be the participation level that you were in Discord. There's lots of ways that I might consider it. So, just trying to give you additional options there. You will then submit this form. My form's all cleared out, so I can't show you the submission here, but it'll just say, you got a submission. I don't know if it sends a confirmation, but just make sure that you submit this once and that your email is correct. Okay, so just 100 check it 3 times before you submit this form that your email is correct, because if your email is not correct, then it might not be that big of a deal, because I will still be able to match you up in the account, but just make sure that you do your best to make sure that is correct. But yeah, hopefully this isn't too stressful, but good luck on final submissions. And don't wait, submit, because we're running out of time here. And what I said, at the end of July, grading is done and over with. I'm not going to do any more grading in this capacity. And this is your only opportunity to get into Red Squad. So we'll see you there. And yeah, good luck. Ciao.